we're going to look at their current plan. And let's say this area up here at the top, this blue box at the top, are the assumptions we're going to make. So on their current plan, let's say I'm going to use a hypothetical couple at age 40 up here. They tell me they want to retire at 70 and start taking income at 71. We'll fill those in. I'll kind of ask them, what they're doing, and I'm going to just plug in some numbers. Let's say a 40-year-old couple, they're both working. They tell me they've saved $480,000. And I'm just pulling that number out of the hat. Let's say between husband and wife, they're saving $26,000 and $26,000, let's say $26,500. Doesn't really matter. And let's say the spouse, the wife of the couple, she gets a strong $6,000 a year match, company match on her 401k. So they're largely focused on saving in their qualified plans. And for our purposes here, we won't get into all the other permutations and combinations, but effectively, prior to doing a retirement ready or not, I've asked them, what's keeping them up at night financially, what's been their experience with financial advisors, how long have they worked at their current vocation, kids, grandkids. I'm asking a lot of open-ended questions in meeting one. And rather than giving them a fact finder with condescending leading questions, which a lot of agents like to do in meeting one, while you really do need information about people to help them, if you put yourself in the mind of your prospect, they're not always clear that they trust you enough to open the financial kimono, right? So instead of giving them, again, a granular fact finder in meeting one, what I do is I'll transition into this retirement ready or not process. So I can ask them, hey, let's profile kind of what you're currently doing, understand your goals and objectives, and let's see what the likelihood is of your current plan meeting those goals and objectives, right? So, excuse me. They're putting money in, they've been good savers in a qualified plan. Both husband and wife are saving. They've got an employee match. And so now it's important for me to level set with them. So most people are postponing their taxes to the future. They haven't tax me later accounts, right? So it's nice to bring this up because, again, most people that are putting money in qualified plans don't understand that they're postponing both the tax and the tax calculation to sometime in the future as defined by Uncle Sam, right? And so the other concept they don't typically understand, and again, this is not a matter of intelligence for most prospects, it's a matter of focus. They're postponing tax to the future. This is the quintessential future tax risk we all talk about, where they've got Uncle Sam as the unintended, uninvited partner in retirement. And in over 20 states that charge state income tax, the state, there are at last count over 20 states that charge state income tax on qualified plan distribution. Excuse me. And I hope you're all sitting down because there are a couple states that now have municipalities, that's counties and townships that have taxing authority that are starting to tax qualified plan distributions. So for a 40-year-old couple like this, if they're putting money in a 401k or other qualified plan, not only do they have to worry about what Uncle Sam's going to do in the future, but potentially the state they retire to and whatever county they live in, all could be like vampires on your client's 401k, right? And so most people are not aware of this tax risk. I had a guy that works for a pharmaceutical firm, got close to $1.5 million in his qualified plan. He's a PhD research scientist. He saw this and was shocked. No one ever told me this, Tom. People look at their statements, they think it's all their money, right? And it never was, never will be if it's qualified, right? So again, you have to start educating them about what they're doing. Now, so now that they understand this, that they've got a future tax risk, I'll go up here and to this field up here in the assumptions, and I'll ask him, so Mr. and Mrs. Jones, what tax bracket are you in? And so you'll notice I'm not telling them what tax bracket they're in. These are the IRS tax brackets directly from the IRS, right? So what tax bracket are you in? And let's say this couple looks at the chart and says, yeah, we're in the 24% tax bracket. So they type it in. Again, you want them to have full confidence in these numbers. So now that we've talked about the risk of future taxation on qualified plans and on any retirement plan, I like to ask them, what do they think is going to happen to taxes in the future? And so here's a little pop-up. I'm asking them what they think their retirement income tax rate is going to be. And many people believe that we are at high income tax rates relative to the past, since the inception of income tax in 1913, I think it was. But we're at historic low income tax rates. So, and that's a good perspective for most people. They've been much higher, but most people running around today, not all, don't remember the high tax rates in the past, right? So I'll ask them what they think their taxes are likely to be in the future, and they'll give me a number. Now, if they're reasonable, if they're, listen, you live in California, you may be paying 10 to 12% taxes to the state alone today. I think they charge up to 11 or 12.4% on qualified plan distributions in California. But so there's a very good chance they'll be in the 30 to 40% range in most states, especially a couple like this that have 30 years to retirement. So if you get someone who doesn't think taxes are going to go up, I had a guy a few weeks ago who thought, oh, Donald Trump's going to win the next election. He's going to hammer taxes and they're going to go down, right? So I actually had a guy say that. And so when that happens, I don't argue, right? I'm like, listen, have you looked at the national debt lately, right? 30 plus trillion. And this is just a snapshot. Uncle Sam has all these promises and obligations he's made in red here that he has not one thin dime to pay for. Look at Social Security, $21 trillion, trillion with a T, in promises made that there's not one dime in the federal coffers to pay for. Bernie Madoff never did anything this bad, right? It never did. It's the largest, Social Security is the largest Ponzi scheme in the history of man. It's just that Uncle Sam can do it because he controls all the cards, right? So if someone doesn't think taxes are going up, don't argue with them. Just say, listen, what are you talking about? When do you think we can run up this credit card forever? Right. Well, it's to the point I was making earlier. You're far better off letting Tony Robbins, 60 Minutes, Ed Slott, Time Magazine, some of these folks say some things, the same things that you could say very articulately. Again, you don't want to shoulder the burden of credibility on that because they don't know who you are. And so while it's fair to say that my left elbow knows way more than Tony Robbins about qualified and non-qualified plan fees, right? The point is, no one knows who I am, and everyone knows who Tony Robbins is. And one of the things I didn't want to admit when I first got in the industry was CPAs and people on television and people that have written books and sports figures and people on the radio get too much default unearned respect. They may deserve it, but they haven't earned it, right? So again, instead of fighting that, I've just admitted it's part of the human condition. And listen, I don't try to buck the trend. I can't change human nature, even though I think it's crazy, right? So, you know what? I wanted to play one of those videos. I hope the audio works. I'm just going to play this short 25-second video of this gal at a world-renowned economic school in New York. Listen to her speak and tell me if you think you can imagine you sounding more credible than this woman in 25 seconds.
The 401k is one of the only products that Americans buy, but they don't know the price of it.
It's also one of the products that Americans buy that they don't even know its quality. It's one of the products that Americans buy that they don't know its danger. And it's because the industry, the mutual fund industry, have been able to protect themselves against regulation that would expose the danger and price of their products.
So now they realize how important future taxes are. Listen, if they're unrealistic, I'm up with a few videos and some other pop-ups, right? And suddenly they'll come back here and say, oh yeah, we could be in the 36% tax bracket or the 40% tax bracket when we retire. I just want them to be within reason. If they're not within reason, I educate them more. They come back and put a real number in there. But I never force the issue. I never tell them you're going to be in a super high tax bracket. You got to put 45 here. I might think this couple in California is going to clearly be over 40%, but I'm not going to beat them up. I just want them to be closer to realistic. And I also remind them, listen, you don't want to sugarcoat it either way, right? Because we're trying to project what's the likelihood that your current plan or the plan you're currently contemplating is likely to meet your family's goals and objectives, right? And so why hurt yourself by being unrealistic, right? So the next step is plan fees. Like Mr. and Mrs. Jones, had you never met me, what kind of fees do you think you'd be paying with your 401k, right? And most people know their fees, but they don't know how much they are. And so the truth is, qualified plans have at least two levels of fees. The first level of fees are fees that are required to be disclosed in the prospectus based on legislation passed by Congress, kicking and screaming about 5 years ago, where it has to be in the prospectus, the plan itself. Employers almost never pay these fees. The participants in the plan pay them, and they range from 1 to 2.5%, depending on the type of plan, and their micro plans are exceptions, some exceptions, but the 401k averages book is like a Consumer Reports. It pulls and collects data on 30,000 plus qualified plans nationally every year. So whatever they say goes. If they tell you you're paying between 1 and 2, that's what you're paying. It's largely dependent on the size of your employer. And while it is in the prospectus, right? It is in the prospectus. Good luck finding it, right? It's going to be on page 435, subparagraph C in 0.2 font, and you'll need an electron microscope to read it and a degree in finance, right? So while Wall Street will disclose the fees of their 401ks, they adhere. What I say is they adhere to the letter of the law by having the fees in there, but they trounce all over the spirit of the law by making them nearly impossible to find or decipher, right? All they want to do is make sure if they have to go to court that they can say to the judge, oh yeah, the fees are right here on page 234, Your Honor. Here's your electron microscope. You can read it. The law says nothing about the font size, right? So now what are most people invested in their 401k? And it's usually mutual funds. There might be a pedestrian set of bond funds and a money market fund and the super mid cap European exposure fund, although you don't want to have exposure to Ukraine now, right? So most people are in these mutual funds and maybe a mix of bond funds depending on their age inside there. And with newer 401ks, there might be a 401k or a Roth component or carve out inside it's not really inside the 401k, but effectively they can do the same, right? So, but here Forbes reports that the average mutual fund manager charges 4.17% in fees, which are not required to be disclosed to the account holder. That bears some repeating. The SEC in its infinite wisdom has decided that these mutual fund managers can charge these fees and they do not have to disclose them to you. They're hidden. Here's the iceberg. You see or maybe know about some of the fees, but here are the fees that you don't know about. So remember, I'm in a meeting with a prospect. I'm asking them if they never met me and they continue with their plan, in this case qualified, what kind of fees do you think they pay if they never met me, right? Because you got to get them in touch with what they're doing. And what we want to do is profile what they're doing later so that if we introduce an IUL, we can do an apples to apples comparison to it. And it's reasonable, right? So I don't put a number in here. I just educate them. We got all kinds of videos, right? All kinds of videos to talk about all this stuff. So you don't have to be the expert on all this. Let the third party credible source talk about. We got great videos on fees. Tony Robbins will beat them up for a minute. They'll come back here and put 5% here, 4%. So most people, after seeing that, they at least think they're paying 4 or 5%. Let's say they say 4.5. Even if I think it's 5.5, I'm not fighting them, right? So now, Mr. and Mrs. Jones, let's say you never met me again. You're continuing down this path with your current plan, right? What kind of rate of return do you think you could get had you never met me, right? And so I pop up the S&P 500 for the last 22 years. So since 2000, if you were in the markets in the S&P using the buy, hold, and pray strategy, you would have made 5.5% compounded annual growth rate. And this is pre-tax, obviously, right? Because it's in a 401k, right? Wall Street will promote that 7% as the mathematical average. We all learn in second grade, right? But what we don't learn in second grade is that it doesn't work very well. Averages don't work well when there are negative numbers in the grouping. So of course, Wall Street uses the deceptive 7% to promote and not the compounded annual growth rate, right? The other thing you have at your fingertips is this is without dividends, and most people don't invest in anything that gives them dividends, but if they do, it's usually less than 18 to 22% of their portfolio. So here's with dividends. And the reason you want to show the chart with dividends is, and these numbers may seem high, and they are. And why are they high? It's because Uncle Sam has been printing money since 2009 at 0% or less than 1%. He's been printing free money. The markets have been running. It's not because of anything anyone did well. The markets have been running when Uncle Sam prints money. A blind squirrel would have done well over the last 10 or 12 years, right? So it's important to show the dividend adjusted returns of the S&P as well, because I'm a non-FINRA licensed person, but some FINRA advisors will try to scare your prospects by saying, oh, you met that guy, Alex. I'm sure he showed you all these index things. Well, those guys never talk about dividends. We give you dividends in our variable life insurance policy. Of course, that same FINRA licensed person won't disclose all the fees of their variable products, or the client would run out of the office screaming, right? But they'll beat you up because you didn't talk about dividends. So be sure to include the dividends. I do that, and then I'll show a graph here, and I say, listen, most people are lucky to get to the red line. If you did all dividend adjusted investing up till December 31st of 2021, you would have been on the blue line. Again, most people are invested in less than 18% of dividend adjusted stocks. And again, this is to give them an idea so that they can give you a real number here. What rate of return are they likely to make over time, right? So they'll give me a number. Listen, if they say 5 or 4.5, I'm not going to fight them. 6, I'll probably fight them a little bit. But you'll get people that'll say 7, 8, 9, 10, 12, double-digit returns. And why? Because they've been floating in the market with the buy, hold, and pray strategy, right? Uncle Sam's been printing free money. And those people, I've never found anyone that said 10, 12, 13%. They can never show me their statements for 2008. No, we don't have our statements. Oh, we had a different advisor back then. They can never come clean and show me those statements, right? So people get an unrealistic sense and they get lulled to sleep. Listen, you should have made double-digit returns in the market over the last 11, 12 years, just floating on a raft in the market, right? You're not a good surfer just because you were on your board floating around in the ocean when a 300-foot tsunami came through, right? That doesn't make you a good surfer. But people get lulled to sleep. They'll say some unrealistic number. So again, like all these other assumptions, and these are critical, you want to they need to be vested in these numbers. I don't give them the number. I don't strong arm them into typing any specific number, right? So if they say some unrealistic number, again, I play more videos, I educate them more, they come back and they're realistic. Occasionally you get some hard heads who think they're going to be able to get double-digit returns. And I'll break this out. Look, Harvard University reported in its own magazine in 2009 that they lost 29.5% of the largest higher education endowment, $40+ billion in 1 year in 2008. They reported that in their own magazine, they lost it 30%. So I'll say, Joe, Alice, how would you expect to get good wealth management advice or do well in the markets if Harvard can't get good wealth management advice on Wall Street? How in the world do you expect to do that, right? Like, and that's usually checkmate. You've got enough here. So if someone's being unrealistic and they want to put 10 or 12 or 14, make them prove it to you, right? Or ask them, how they did in 2008, because we're averaging 2 major market corrections per decade, right? And we haven't had one in over 12 years or 13 years. So it's coming, right? And it's how you do in those market bad years that's critical. That's counterintuitive for most people. So again, you've got what you need. Let's say they put a number in here, I don't know, even 5%. Even if I think that's high, I'll let them get away with it. Now, the last question I have for him here is, what kind of income do you think you need, Mr. and Mrs. Jones, to maintain your lifestyle in retirement? I want you to be able to visit your kids and grandkids, do any travel, golf, tennis, fishing, boating, whatever you like to do, whatever. I want you to be able to do those same things. Maintain your current lifestyle in retirement, right? So, in addition to Social Security or whatever other income you have coming in, what kind of income do you think you need to maintain your lifestyle in retirement? So a couple like this that's putting $26,000 and change away every year, I would argue between husband and wife, they're probably making $250,000 to $300,000 or more, because you rarely meet people that are saving more than 10% of what they make gross. So a couple like this might say, a very typical couple like this might say, Tom, we could live on $150,000 a year. So they plug that number in. We plug that number in, and the dashboard is what this called. Always gives these numbers you see here, like cumulative taxes and cumulative fees. All these numbers are based on this future age. So I'm going to go right to age 76. Or excuse me, I'll go to 77, because they're running out of money, as you see down here at the bottom of the column, at age 76. So given the assumptions we've made, and these couple is good savers, they're going to save going forward. They've got a big match, right? They think 150,000 is conservative because they're making 250 or 300. They think I can live on the 150, when we retire, that should be enough money, right? They're running out of money at age 76, right? And look, if they're blessed to live to age 77, they will have paid $1.7 million in fees alone. So, and the taxes they've paid are over $500,000, $571,000, right? So this is shocking to them because they're good savers. They're running out of money at 76. And this is sobering for most people. And here's an example. This should disturb them, right? And we haven't even talked about inflation, by the way. We do. Our system does inflation up here. You can put an inflated number in there, but you'll scare the crap out of them. You could talk about inflation and the eroding power of their dollar. You could show them inflation by decade. All these pop-ups are right at your fingertips to talk with them about. We've got, they want to get into more granular detail on taxes. You've got that kind of information too here on exemption amounts and all that stuff. While you do not want to be giving tax advice, it's nice to have this stuff available to you to reference quickly and keep the conversation going so you don't get hung up on a tangent, if you will. So at age 77, they're running out of money. So this couple realizes quickly, hey, we can work longer, but or retiring at age 71, right? Maybe taxes won't go up as high, but they could go up higher. Maybe we could get a better rate of return. There are only a few variables. We could save more, but I assume if you could save more, you would already be doing that. Usually one of the spouses will say, oh, honey, we could probably live comfortably and pay our bills on 110,000 a year. So when they do that, it's beautiful. You want them to start entering different numbers, what if scenarios. Okay, if they can live on 110, that gets them to age 79. So we'll go to age 80 here, right? I'll guarantee you a 40-year-old couple thinks they're going to live beyond age 80, right? Even if the actuary tables may not say that, right? Or they probably do. But look, if they get to age 80, they're blessed to live to age 80. Look at the fees they paid, $1.825 million. And that could be low. I think they're paying more in fees. The average couple I meet is paying more in fees that they don't know about, right? So, and look, they only got $1 million, $1.019 million in income after tax income from their qualified plan. Why is that? This is what they don't realize sometimes. Remember, Uncle Sam is your unintended and uninvited partner in retirement, right? You got this tax. They got to pull out $171,000 and pay tax on it, state, federal, and whatever other tax before this 110 hits their pocket. So they're disturbed, right? Because here's what they're doing, right? They're following the herd, right? Most people are the wildebeest in this picture. Uncle Sam's wading in the river, right? Who's responsible for the decision to go into a 401k, right? And then, so listen, these are the risks, and these aren't all the risks, right? And then you'll occasionally get a guy or gal say, oh, Alex, I have a Roth. I'm not exposed to these risks, right? So if you're the Roth owner, you may have gotten rid of some of your tax risks, but you still have to contend with market risk and fee risk, right? So this is that rich dad, poor dad quote. If you want to be wealthy, find out what everyone else is doing and do the exact opposite. 10% of the people make 90% of the money in the US, and the other 90% struggle to make the remaining 10%. That's even worse today. Jeff Bezos makes more than everyone in 3 or 4 states combined, right? So do you think this is, do you think 401ks are a 10% strategy or a 90% strategy? Look, AARP says here, Americans lose $17 billion a year due to bad retirement advice with hidden fees and unfair risk. Say, listen, most people are good savers. They're really good at what they do every day, but it is a matter of focus, not intelligence. And in the absence of a better idea, what do people do? They follow the herd. That's what they're doing in a 401k. It's not your fault. It's what most people do. It's part of the ancient limbic part of your brain follows the herd for survival reasons when you don't have enough information or other better solutions. Alex and I saw the bridge going across the river, and we walked casually across the bridge. So you've got all these, look, here's the guy, Jack Bogle started Vanguard. They're the largest purveyor of mutual funds worldwide and widely regarded as the low-cost leader. He said, you put up 100% of the capital, you took 100% of the risk, and you only got 33% of the return, right? The other, by the way, I met this guy, Jack Bogle, had lunch with him. I have, before he died, he came to a seminar I did of all things. I saw him in the back of the room, and I was bummed. I couldn't even talk. I was shocked because he's a guy I have a lot of respect for, and ended up talking with him. Why did I bring him up? My office is 9 miles from the Vanguard Group, their corporate headquarters. At last count, I have like 84 clients that work for Vanguard selling mutual funds all day, and they're my clients. With their money, they're doing what I tell them, right? But they're peddling mutual funds all day long. That's an aside. I liked, that's an accomplishment that means a lot to me. They're headed for the perfect financial storm in retirement with their current plan. They're running out of money at 79, and they're at best case, and they could easily be running out of money if some of these numbers go go south, they could be running out of money much earlier, unfortunately, right? And we haven't even talked about inflation. And if you feel you need inflation, go ahead. Let's say they've said $110,000. You say, let's put 3% in here let's just put 2.5% for inflation in here. That means in tomorrow's dollars, down here at the bottom of the screen in yellow, they're going to need $236,000 a year when they turn 71. If that doesn't demoralize them, nothing will. Right? That should, if we plug 236,000 in here, let's see how fast they run out of money. 236. They're running out of money at 74. So with inflation, this is probably a more realistic number. It's sad, but true. I usually don't show inflation because you could actually demoralize people into inaction, right? So boom, I hit the tax-free plan, right? So now this tax-free plan is really the IUL, right? So it seems like a busy screen, but it's not, because it's just another column. This is just another plan, right? Here's their current plan. That's what they're doing. Now you're going to talk about this new plan, right? And we've imported the carrier illustration data. This is an actual IUL carrier. Notice that we import all fees, costs, and expenses. Most agents stay away from fees, costs, and expenses because they have no way to do a comparative analysis of them. If you show a prospect all the fees, costs, and expenses of an IUL in isolation without being able to compare them to what they're likely going to pay in fees, you could have someone run because they look exorbitant, right? So this is a client putting 20 grand a year away in premiums up to age 68, it looks like. And then they're going to take some money out in income. It looks like $94,000 a year to age 120. You can see in that column. And again, look, you always want to create your illustrations or have your carriers create the illustrations for you with all fees, costs, and expenses. It's absolutely critical because fees are going to be one of your major selling features. Normally, there's something agents stay away from. Now they're a tremendous benefit in selling feature, right? So, excuse me. So on this tab, we our illustration tab, we can import you run the illustration, we import it quickly, right? Then there's you and we're carrier agnostic, whatever carrier or carriers you like. Within a second or a minute and a half, 2 minutes, you can import the illustration data for any carrier you want. Again, we're carrier agnostic. This isn't data that you can change either. This is data directly from the carrier. Carriers love this because when we went through compliance, they saw that the agent's not changing these numbers. All the data, if this data is wrong, it was wrong in the carrier audited illustration software. So you bring it in with all fees, costs, and expenses, right? Now, this couple, they don't know what an IUL is, right? It's the Swiss Army knife of financial strategies, right? And, you can talk about how it has living benefits, right? And this isn't your grandfather's Oldsmobile or whatever. It's not the old permanent whole life insurance that most people are familiar with. And most people, have the misperception that it's just a love product. They're buying insurance only for someone they love. If you want to talk about tax codes, TEFRA, DEFRA, and TAMRA, the money going in and out, all kinds of visuals, right? So, here's your life insurance policy, and you're filling it with more money than is required for the annual premiums and fees, right? And it's all this conceptual stuff that they need. If they don't understand caps and floors, you can explain those caps and floors to them, right? And look up here with the graphs. Now that same S&P graph we give you a side-by-side column with the S&P with with a hypothetical 0% floor and 13% ceiling. So they start to understand it's wildly more important what they don't lose in market bad years, right? So they've consciously given up some of the upside in market good years for an absolute guarantee of no downside in bad years. Now you want to be careful to tell them that carriers vary with caps and floors and whatever state you're in, but this is effectively how indexing works. And this helps you walk through some of those concepts so they understand what you're talking about with the tax-free plan. You can talk about the annual lock-in and reset feature. This is a slide created by Doug Andrew 22 years ago, and it still is very helpful today. Got all kinds of stuff. You can look at the worst decade in U.S. market history with a cap of 0 and a cap of 12 and a floor of 0. Some sample decades with the same cap and floor. You want to talk about living benefits? We got the whole list of living benefits here. Most people think they'll never need long-term care, but 70% of people that get to this age over 65 will need some form of long-term care services. So, and there's again, caps and floors side by side, right? With and without dividends, so they can see both. So while you would have done a lot better with dividends in the S&P, their account's still taxable. The IUL is income tax free. The same chart there. So you'll notice continuity. They've seen some of these pop-ups before, but now we're filling them in for comparative analysis with an IUL. And it's all this stuff, their plan has all these fees, right? The money's going down the drain with fees and taxes. Our plan, instead of a tax me later account, this is a tax me never account, right? So you have some continuity in what you've said and talked about with the client. This couple, I'll say, okay, let's take the 480 out of it. Let's say we cannot get access to that 480,000. We're going to do an apples to apples comparison, and with just the 26,000 they're saving, plus they get the match, the IUL gets no match. And I think this IUL, we put in 20,000 as the number. Notice it grosses up the pre-tax contribution. Either way, if you type in the pre-tax number, it's going to put in the post-tax number in for the IUL, or vice versa when you're talking with the client. That's nice. And let's go to the illustration. I can't remember the income. The income here was 94,315 was the number coming out of the IUL to 120. We're going to put the same number, same amount of income coming out of both plans. Now, this is important because you want your prospect to see an apples to apples comparison. The same, whatever money you're putting in, you're putting the same money in pre-tax, post-tax, same money coming out post-tax, right? So they intuitively understand this is a fair and balanced equation. So their plan is running out of money down here at age 77 under this scenario with the same money going in and out. So I say, Mr. and Mrs. Jones, let's go to age 78 then and look at the numbers. If you are blessed, you want to look down here in the lower right. If you're blessed to live to age 78, Mr. and Mrs. Jones, and you stay with your 401k rather than doing this IUL, just redirecting what you're currently saving, you will have made approximately, conservatively, a $2.6 million financial error for you and your family. $2.6 million. That means you will have leaked or lost, unknowingly or unnecessarily, $2.6 million by just staying with your 401k. Now, what I tell my clients I do is I'm a safe money, no market risk guy. I help prevent business owners and individuals from leaking and losing money unknowingly and unnecessarily. And if I can prevent you from leaking $2.6 million by age 78, Mr. and Mrs. Jones, isn't that the equivalent of me making that money for you? All financial advisors are going to try to grow your money as quickly as possible, right? And hopefully try to protect you from some risk. But if I can keep you from leaking 2.6, that's just as good as I made it. And I don't have to take a lot of risk to get that 2.6, right? Like, look, if they live to age 88, they've lost $3.2 million is the total advantage in this case. I mean, that's staggering. And I think the average 40-year-old is projected to live beyond 88 on average if they live past 60, I think it says. So look, many advisors say, oh yeah, continue to contribute to the 401k so you can get the employer match. Well, look, the employer match, to put it frankly, is kind of like a sample of crack cocaine for most people. Why? Because it keeps them doing the very thing that's going to cause their financial destruction in the future. That $6,000 is one of the biggest matches I've ever seen. I had a gal at Bloomberg, single gal. She gets $8,200 a year in a match. And that's the biggest match I've ever seen for someone putting the federal maximum in. And she immediately abandoned the match once she saw these numbers. Is it worth it to you to lose $3.2 million to get a $6,000 a year match? I mean, come on, right? So any agent or advisor that tells their client without doing the math that, oh yeah, continue to contribute to get the match is performing financial malpractice. That's what it is. They didn't do the math. It's counterintuitive, yes, but it's something you want to know. Try to tell them that without doing the math here, right? Try to look at the fee differential. If they get to, let's go back to age 78, when the 401k dried up and blew away like a tumbleweed here, right? 77. Let's look at the fee differential. While the IUL has fees, why would you want to pay an extra $829,000 in fees to your 401k? What do you get for it? It blows away like a tumbleweed at age 77. At least with an IUL, you've got, at least with an IUL, you get something for it, right? You get some value for it, for fees. Notice too that we talk about death benefit. Most people don't associate a death benefit with their current investing plan, but I like to get them started thinking about that now. There is a death benefit for a 401k. It's what's ever left over. Look, at age 70, you can go to age 70 before they run out of money. What's the death benefit for their 401k? It's $670,000. What's your death benefit for the IUL? 1.5 million, right? So there is a death benefit. It's just people aren't used to thinking about it in those terms. They only think about death benefit when they think about life insurance. So apples to apples. Now, if you get a CPA or a numbers person, you're going to show them this detailed tab, detailed comparison tab. This gives you a longitudinal view of all the numbers with all the fees. You can see, okay, over 30, 40 years. Oh, look, in yellow, here's where we're running out of money. TFP stands for tax-free plan in blue, right? Or cyan, I guess is the color. And look, they're pulling 147,000 out and paying 53,000 dollars in taxes in red. So while this is an eye chart and some people won't look at it, right? It's available to you if you get a financial person or you want to have someone look. The dashboard is a snapshot in time. This is what we call our detailed comparison tab. It shows you 30 years in running. Dashboard, we're at 78. Here's a takeaway. We can go to our total advantage scorecard. See the scorecard tab down here in green at the bottom of the screen. I'm going to click it. I'm going to go right to the total advantage scorecard. At age 78, should they be blessed to live that long, their plan died on the vine at age 77. Your plan goes to 120. It gives you the delta, all this stuff. What's the total advantage, right? And then we can go to page 2, where we give them all the assumptions. These are the assumptions we used to generate this projection and side-by-side comparison between an IUL and their current plan. So they know how you came to those numbers. And here's a reminder down at the bottom of their plan benefits, right? So lots of people forget that permanent life insurance has college aid advantages, right? Or chronic and critical illness advantages, or it increases their collateral capacity. When's the last time you mentioned to an IUL prospect that you're going to increase their collateral capacity, right?